I haven't told my boss yet, but
Ugh.
because she'll freak out. I don't need the coverage until I know, and it'll be Friday when I see how I'm doing. I'm gonna have to go get patches because I won't be able to smoke either.
Okay, sorry, I had to disrobe a little bit. Um, don't don't want any.
where we hope to entertain you as well as educate you about the weather. We are all weather enthusiasts. We are not meteorologists, so we are learning along with you as we go. My name is Patty, and I'll be driving along with this train tonight. And I have some other fellow weather enthusiasts with me. My call sign for amateur radio is Kilo Delta Zero Alpha Echo Lima, and I am the regional coordinator for Southwest Missouri Regional Skywarn.
And hi, I am Rodney. My call sign is Kilo Zero Foxtrot Zulu. I do work with Patty as far as net controls for both Greene County and the regional as a secondary. So basically, when the primary is not available, I can get in there and help whenever I can. And just all around weather nerd. So whatever we talk about tonight, hopefully it'll be something we can learn. So.
And I'm Steve, KA0SPM. I'm the hopefully producer of these shows. Try to make sure that our content gets out there and it looks nice. We do have a special guest with us this evening, and it is actually probably morning where he is just.
Turned 1 minute past 2.
If you want to
2 in the
introduce
morning.
yourself and let everybody know who you are.
Yeah, definitely. My name's Kieran. You probably noticed me in the comments as Killer B. I'm from Great Britain, about an hour outside of London. Yeah, it's just turned in the morning for me, 2 in the morning, so. But I do love to watch these guys, and it's really interesting to learn new things, and I don't know much about what they talk about, so I probably won't chime in as much as they do, but I'm really interested in this and learning along with them.
All right, Kieran. Well, it is great to have you with us this evening, and don't be afraid to chime in, because we're if you were not, you'd be on the chat doing it. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true. And feel free to ask any questions here. You don't have to put them in chat this time.
Yeah.
And we've got Franklin with us. Franklin, if you'll go ahead and introduce yourself, you're just in time. If you can hear me.
I think he broke his mic.
Something's not working. It's the adventures of Skype. We did Ham Nation, and we had a dreamy connection. It was awesome. And as quick as Bob Hiles said over to you guys, the feed cut.
Yeah, we died.
Yeah.
Right there.
Dang. And then it happened just slightly again during it. So I don't know if Jordan ever got that sorted out.
You can guarantee he probably will.
Yeah. But that was kind of an adventure.
Well,
Anyway.
Franklin's ironing out his things here. I'll go ahead and introduce him. This is Franklin. His call sign is KD0RSJ. He is the coordinator for Greene County Skywarn, and he also helps out with regional net control. Franklin, are you with us?
Yeah, I was having problems with my headset. Apparently, for some reason, the audio's not wanting to go through, so I'm going to have to wing it with the built-in speakers and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a little whoosh there, I'm assuming is your fan, but it's not too disruptive.
Yeah, hold on just a second. Let me tweak a couple things, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, our first item of agenda on the show tonight is current weather events, and to be honest with you, I've been preparing for a trip, so I really don't know what our weather's like. So somebody join us and tell us what's going on. It looks like rain.
It looks like rain. It does. For Southwest Missouri and formerly for portions of Southeast Kansas. We've got a little shortwave coming through. It did have some 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts recorded over on the Kansas side and possibly a little hail, though none got directly reported. It seems to be weakening as it's entering into our area. I was hoping for a little bit more rain out of this than what it seems to be bringing with it. The bigger show for rain, though, should occur in the overnight hours. That's what we're anticipating. So that's it for Southwest Missouri. Nothing real dramatic tonight. Maybe some wind gusts, lots of lightning. Potential for flooding any areas that get training rains or areas that were affected earlier this evening. They got some pretty heavy downpours in a short period of time. They may be a little more susceptible to flooding. The good news in our forecast is that there is very little of our area that is still under drought conditions. There's a small corner of Southwest Missouri where I think 3 counties are still considered to be in drought. There's an area of Northeast Arkansas as well. So these rains are very welcome, even though they are bringing back with them 90-degree temperatures and tons of humidity. So summer is back after our week-long reprieve. And that's it for
enjoyed
weather.
that week-long reprieve, even though I didn't get out and do much. It was a lot nicer whenever I was out.
Oh, yeah, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful.
So, we certainly don't want to leave our guests out. I've got the Met Office website up, and it looks like, Kiram, you are in for a hot spell coming up.
Yeah, I know we've got a really big heat wave coming in tomorrow, which is not going to be fun.
Yeah.
We've been having that for the past sort of couple of weeks, and unfortunately, the UK is used to rain, sleet, snow, and everything else besides heat. So
it gets up to 30 C, and you guys are burning up, right?
oh yes.
Well, it appears that there aren't any storms going in the islands. Other than offshore, off the western side of Ireland. And let's see. And it looks like...
I'm sure the tropical storm Isaias hasn't made it that far yet.
I think that one died in Canada, didn't it?
I really hadn't kept up with it since it went off to Conus. I'm not even seeing it. I'm up to Cape Breton on my radar, and I'm not seeing it. Although there's a low pressure system, looks like just on the edge of Newfoundland. Did I say that right, Newfoundland? Which could very well be it. I don't have radar for that area. So it hasn't trekked across the Atlantic yet.
It would be nice to have some rain though, because we don't have time to always water the garden, so all my plants are dying.
That's not good.
We were doing that today and transplanted a tree, so...
So most of my day today was actually spent cleaning up the kids' playroom.
So
what I'm showing now is the current convective outlook for the continental United States, which shows a marginal area of risk of storms, basically across the central Great Plains up into Canada, from down in Oklahoma. There are a few little pop-up severe storms up in South Dakota. There's one in Colorado, but these are almost garden variety pop-up summertime storms. So
And yeah, and I was taking a look here. I just pulled up radar scope, and I was going to see if maybe I might have something in it because I know it does include Canadian radar that might hit up around that area. And there's just no radar sites up around there. It's like you get like halfway up Canada, and there's nothing north of there, and most of the radar sites, it seems like, do not extend very far.
Right.
Wow.
Well,
Might even be a better one for satellite view, where that
Yeah.
might be more readily available. And we're going to learn a little about satellites tonight.
Cool.
so yeah, if there's no other current events on weather, it looks like the United States and Britain are looking pretty good. We will turn it over to Patty to let us know about watching weather satellites.
Well, I actually have a couple of videos to show that these guys do a great job of making it simple and easy to understand for the layperson. Um, here we go. I need to share my screen again. So there are several different types of satellites that the Weather Service uses to help them to understand the systems as they move across. And if you remember, we talked about a few weeks ago that the Earth is always trying to come to equilibrium and never quite makes it. So you've got high pressure and low pressure systems constantly circulating the Earth. So there's three types of satellite views that really bring those into view: the visible, the infrared, and the water vapor. The item on the left over here is visible. Visible images do represent the amount of sunlight being reflected back into space by clouds or the Earth's surface. Back into space by clouds okay. Cloud-free land and water will typically be dark, while clouds and snow appear bright. Thicker clouds have higher reflectivity and appear brighter than thinner clouds. However, it's difficult to distinguish among low and high level clouds in a visible satellite image. For this distinction, infrared satellite images are useful. Visible images cannot be used when no solar light is available. So what they're saying here for the visible view, basically, the cloud tops are cold and the ground below or the waters below are much warmer. And so what is reflected back is visible because of sunlight reflecting off of it, but there's also a temperature factor there. Infrared really brings the temperatures out. Those images represent the infrared radiation emitted by the clouds or by the Earth's surface. Actually, measurements of temperature for an infrared picture, as depicted here, the second image, warmer objects appear darker than colder objects. Cloud-free areas will be dark, but also very low clouds and fog may appear dark. Most other clouds are bright. High-level clouds are brighter than low-level clouds. And why would that be? That would be temperature. Water vapor images are another one that they utilize, as depicted here in the third image. The amount of water vapor in the mid and upper atmosphere. Water vapor images are useful for pointing out regions of moist and dry air. White regions on the imagery represent more moisture than dark regions. And you can see the swirls of the low pressure systems very prominently in this image, where you have, I would say that was probably a small hurricane or at least a very large system pushing through, wrapping around that low pressure system. And I think from there, let's cue one and let him talk about the interpreting visible and infrared satellite. It's very informative. Short video. He does a great job bringing it into layman's terms so we can understand.
Oh, I gotta fix it.
So I have a full satellite loop. Visible satellite imagery off of reflected visible. So the more light that an object reflects, higher its albedo, less light it reflects, lower its albedo. That often helps us tell things about how thick red imagery, though, differently off of emissions of infrared tied to temperature. The warmer an object is, or additional infrared. The colder an object is, light it will appear. So, getting back to our visible image here, our loop goes on, we can see a stationary area of white shading across it. It goes on, it doesn't move at all. It's not clouds, but this area of white across Alabama skies are clear, high albedo. Also see little dark specks across the frozen water. We also note that the entire image is fairly dark at the beginning of the loop. It brightens up as we go on, and we can see that's because it starts at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Sky, there's not a lot of reflecting anything. Sun rises, reflected visible light, everything bright. Because red satellite doesn't require that progression of the day is different. You can't notice it here though in an area of clear skies. Not because reflected visible light, because of changes in temperature. Skies being sun rose throughout the day, ground warmed up, and we can tell that. Beginning of the loop, faint gray colored, but as the loop goes on, we go from that faint gray and it gets darker. The ground is actually warming. On the infrared image, we can see fairly bright-looking clouds. Arkansas toward the end. The fact that they're bright means it's cold, and they must have fairly high tops because on visible satellite imagery, those clouds look a bit differently. Toward the clouds here, fairly faint gray means that they're not reflecting a lot of visible low albedo, so they must be relatively thin. So we know from the visible image they are thin clouds, and from the infrared image, high clouds. Talking about these clouds. Now over the central Gulf of Mexico, we have a kind of a speckled appearance. They must be reflecting not a visible brighter than those cirrus. But when we look at those clouds over the central Gulf on infrared imagery, actually pretty very faintly see those speckled clouds over the central Gulf, but they're very, very dark gray shaded on the image. That means that they form must have low tops. They have low tops from the infrared, still at least somewhat thick from the visible topped. As we look at the clouds over Florida here, they have bright shading on the infrared, and that means they have high tops, cloud top. Look at those same areas of clouds on the visible loop. Clouds are also quite bright. Thick. They have a high albedo. They're reflecting a lot of light. So we know from the visible loop that they're thick. We know from the infrared loop they have high tops. So those are probably at least some of those clouds over Florida. Hopefully, this gives you an idea how to track things like cover and the progression of a day, how to tell cloud thickness from cloud height.
I found that video very interesting. That he found so many elements in one area
We might,
that he could just focus on all of this is going on in a relatively small area. The snowpack, how it melted, as well as the high top clouds, the cirrus clouds, so we could really get a perspective of what was going on there. That's what caught my eye about that video. The
We-
next one's
we
good.
might want
Oh, go
to
ahead.
put that link into the show notes if you'll send that or put it up on the chat, because it was difficult to hear it.
Okay. It is actually in the Jungle Chasers chat.
You got it in there? Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
Did it not give you
next-
enough audio?
Yeah, it wasn't loud enough. Well, I mean, you could turn it up and hear it, but for those who might want to review it just to make sure they didn't miss anything.
I'll bring it up a little higher. I just didn't want it to overdo it. So
And that was put together by the Dutton Institute. So it was created for Penn State's Meteorology 003 course. So I felt like that was a good one. It's a good intro. The next one talks about infrared satellite imagery, which we're really getting a good taste of with the new GOES satellite that's up. And he talks about the depth of the clouds as well as the temperature readings and how they interpret those. He gives a vertical temperature profile that they can pick up on and what the satellite is actually picking up on. So thought this was a good contrast. This was done by NWS in Billings, Montana. It is about 2.5 minutes long, so it too is not very long. Q2.
okay, I'll see if I can get a little bit better audio here for y'all. And here we go.
Hi, this is John from the Billings National Weather Service office. In this short presentation, I will talk about
A little bit more, Rodney.
and some of its uses.
Needs to be quite a little bit more.
Infrared imagery measures temperature, so the brighter the colors, the colder and generally higher the clouds are. Top two images, we have a comparison between infrared and visible satellite imagery over time. Infrared image on the top left, you see that thunderstorms located over central Missouri and western Illinois are producing a large
Much better.
area of very bright
That's better.
cloud tops, which means these cloud tops are very cold and extend quite high into the atmosphere. We would not know that by looking at the visible satellite image on the top right. The picture profile of the level 20 kilometers. The orange cooled through the
It's breaking up.
when we the cooled the very colors we see in the infrared image on the important features of
Is this playing on the
in the
site?
context.
No, it's whatever you hear on Skype goes out live.
His audio is just intermittent.
Right.
I was going to say, because I really can't hear it at all. I'm listening to the stream on my phone and I can't hear it at all.
Patty, could you send me a link to that?
Sure.
Did something not working right?
Right, the
The
audio's
audio.
like on and off. It's breaking up really badly, so I don't know what's. what's going on with it.
Okay. I don't know. I mean,
Here you go.
We got a backup plan.
that's why when things go live, things.
So while he's doing that, let me share my screen again while he's getting things fixed up. Satellite views can share a great number of things, including eruptions of volcanoes. And in this view from 2001, we can actually see the plume of smoke from the eruption of Mount Etna, pushed by a northwest wind. So it's pushing the smoke to the southeast. The shade of the plume actually covers the volcano, but there's a black zone there, and that's showing the intense heat from the actual volcano. So I thought that was fascinating to me. Another thing that I found that they can pick up on is oil slicks, which I was not aware of, but I guess it makes sense. They would be a different, especially on visible satellite. This was from the wrecked tanker Prestige off the northwest coast of Spain. The oil had already reached the coast when this image was taken.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready when you are.
Let me make sure I got the
Hi, this is Sean from the Billings National Office. In this short presentation, I will talk about infrared satellite imagery and some of its uses. As we recall,
Can you hear it on the
previous
feed?
video, infrared imagery measures temperature, so the brighter the colors, colder and higher the clouds are. In the top two images, we have a comparison between infrared and visible satellite imagery from the same time.
Steve, can you turn up the audio a bit?
On the top left, we see that thunderstorms located over central Missouri and western Illinois are producing a large area of very bright cloud tops, which means these cloud tops are very cold and extend quite
all I got.
into the atmosphere. We would not know that by looking at the visible satellite image on the top
It's
right.
low audio.
Average vertical temperature profile of the lowest 20 kilometers, or roughly the
And we'll
lowest
make
12
sure to
miles of
post
the
this
atmosphere.
in the comments.
Each line generally speaks,
Yeah,
the atmosphere cools quite rapidly through the lowest 6 or 7 miles of the atmosphere. On average, when we reach about 7 miles above sea level, the temperature has cooled to
So
well
basically
below
what he's
almost
talking
60
about is
degrees
the brighter
Celsius,
colors in the infrared
equivalent to
image
minus
show
58
the
degrees
higher cloud
Fahrenheit.
tops. Higher cloud
These very
tops
cold
are
temperatures
typically
allow light to the
into
very
colder
bright colors
regions
we
of
see
the
in infrared image
troposphere.
on the top left.
And so will show up as brighter
Like
colors.
visible satellite
On the
imagery,
visible
infrared imagery
satellite,
helps
they're
meteorologists
brighter, but you can also almost see
Here we
texture
can see
to them.
examples of 5 of these
He
phenomena.
shows examples
In the
here
top
of
left
what
image,
they
we
can
see a cold front
determine
extending from the
with
eastern
this
Great
type of
Lakes
satellite
southwestward
view
into northern
in
Kansas.
cold fronts,
Ahead of the front,
thunderstorms,
there is a
hurricanes,
cloudiness.
winter and
Cloudy, we see
spring
gray
storms that are
skies.
wrapping
A
around
cluster
low
of thunderstorms
pressure
with very cold
systems,
cloud tops.
as well as hotspots. The hotspots that are shown there with the red circles are actually fires that were detected by
in the bottom left
GOES
image, we see a
satellite.
strong
So
winter storm. The brighter clouds
pretty amazing. You can,
shape,
in that cold front
quite
is
typical of a
very,
strong
very
winter
visible
storm,
where
as
the
clouds
front
wrap
is
around an
actually
area of
sitting.
low pressure.
Um,
In the bottom right image, large forest
and in the
fires
hurricane,
appear dark
where the
spots,
eye
which are
is
circled in red.
much
Thanks for watching.
much
Remember,
darker
satellite imagery
color,
on our website can be accessed by clicking on the satellite image towards the bottom of the main page.
And there you have it.
and there you have it. With my poor little interpretation, but there you go.
So I've got a question now.
Sure.
Now this may be elementary, and I know obviously infrared's important to have, but is infrared there so that they can contrast? I'm trying to figure out how I'm asking this, but like, okay, let's say for instance with the hurricane, they can already see water vapor, right? And they
Right.
can already see it does the heat. Obviously, it's basically showing more intensity to the storm, right? So I mean, the more reds and bright colors you see, the more intense the storm can be because you've got more moist, warm air rising into the atmosphere.
More moisture is there. Um, the cloud tops are still going to be cold. Hurricanes are very tall storms, as evidenced by Isaias that just hit us. Quite a number of tornadoes. I didn't see a total count, but over 100. Well, those storms were intense going through the East Coast, and that was a very high top storm.
See,
So
last I'd seen was 20, so that's quite a bit more than what I had seen.
just the first night there were 99. So the count had gone over 100, and I kind of lost track from there. Once it got up into, New Jersey, New York, I kind of lost track of it, honestly.
I can understand.
Yeah, that really stood out with that storm. The satellite views are showing, and let me share again here my screen. They've got one here of tropical cyclone Dinah, showing the differences between the visible image to the left, the infrared image, which really brings out the temperatures, and then the water vapor image. There are distinct differences in what you're seeing in each image, and not being a trained meteorologist, I can't really give you a good definition here, but the visible image, this can only be seen during the daytime with the sun reflecting off the clouds. The infrared image, as he was talking about in that video, and I encourage folks to go back and watch that, the intensity of the storm. These outer bands on the visible image, because they're not showing up in infrared, these are probably cirrus clouds. Lots of moisture there, but they're probably not water-bearing clouds, where the infrared image really narrows down what's the important part of the storm.
Gotcha.
And then the water vapor image, where is the water vapor? Well, that travels right along with that same train of thought, that those are probably cirrus clouds and not water-bearing clouds. So each one has a purpose to them in interpreting the data. For us as amateurs to, be aware when you've got these long lines of clouds here and you switch images, which is probably a good thing to do, you're going to know when you've got a front coming in that has that ahead of it, that you don't have much longer before the big storm comes. So when we're interpreting our radar, that's probably my takeaway on it, is that to know that the thicker, brighter regions are the storm-bearing parts of those clouds.
What's interesting about that is a lot of times, if you're watching like the National Weather Service or the Weather Channel or something like that, and say they're doing hurricane coverage, it seems like they seem to lean more towards the visible image, just so that it looks bigger, more dramatic than it really is.
Looks more dramatic. And there's wind in that. I mean, that's obvious, the way that's circulating around that. There is wind in that, and so we're looking at a coastline here that's probably getting slammed with storm surge at this point, just because you do have that wind driving things. So, it is important to know. But yeah, the dramatic effect between that one, say, and the water vapor image is pretty amazing. So, any questions? I'll do my best.
Well, I was just wondering, the water vapor image, is that something that's sort of like the infrared, that they can take that no matter what time of day it is, or is it more like the visible where it has to be during daylight so that they can see
I didn't get that far into it. I'll be honest, Franklin.
that?
I'm not certain, and it really doesn't say in this brief description that I thought we could grab on to. I'll be honest. I'm packing to travel, and
Oh,
I
I
didn't
understand.
have a lot of time to put into this, but it's just simply the amount of water vapor in the mid and upper atmosphere. So
So there's
now,
it may be for a little help research tool. I posted the College of DuPage on the chat, and it's the SATRAD page portion of it where you can look at all of the different satellite views that they have, and like they can look at blue, green, and red. They can look at long wave infrared. They have one that's called clean, where it's kind of averaged out just a little bit. But there's a whole. I think there's like 20 different views you can get on any satellite view, where you could see where water vapor is, or whatever you're looking for. I mean, if there's something specific that appears in
so
the blue or the red or infrared, it's all in there.
Cool.
So, weather satellite images, let's just define this. A weather satellite detects heat energy in the infrared spectrum. Infrared energy is invisible to the human eye. Satellite images display objects, whether clouds, water, or land surfaces, based on the temperature of the object. Warm temperatures appear in dark shades, cold temperatures appear in light shades. Now, what does the GOES satellite do? GOES provides a continuous monitoring necessary for intensive data analysis. They circle the Earth in a geosynchronous orbit, which means they orbit the equatorial plane of the Earth at a speed matching the Earth's rotation, allowing them to continuously hover over one position on the surface. Okay. So it's kind of introducing to the three major types of satellite images and the major types of satellites. Pardon me. Weather satellite is only one type of satellite. There's remote sensing. I mean, we could go into probably a 2-hour diatribe on all of the different types of satellites: drone satellites, ground satellites, navigation satellites, remote sensing satellites. I don't know what all those do, but
And then you've got the kind that the government uses to keep a watch on everyone else.
right.
Sounds like a rant.
Yeah.
Whoops, a little early for that. So there's lots of great information. I just typed in for my brief presentation tonight, understanding GOES weather satellite images. And it gave me great links, things that they can tell using satellite imagery. I think those are the main links. Those are the main links. But if you want to know more, I do encourage watching both those videos. Less than 10 minutes of your time. Those guys do a great job. And I know that they're going to put the links in there for you. And that's really what I've got today.
That was good. That was awesome. I mean, I didn't realize that they tied all that together. So, I feel like I learned something.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was the same with weather satellites or if weather satellites came along later, but I know just kind of my own one day, I can't remember how I got along to this, but I got to an article about the origins of spy satellites. And used to, at one time back in the 50s, they actually sent up a satellite. It took pictures. It came back down, and they actually had to get the film out of the satellite and develop it so that, the various intelligence agencies and then all the way on up to the president could actually see the pictures of what the satellite was taking. So I kind of wonder if in the very early days of weather satellites, I kind of wonder if it wasn't maybe kind of the same thing. And then, of course, we moved on to technology where, you could have digital photography and stuff, and they could actually transmit that data down from the satellite to the ground so that it wasn't a constant process of shooting a satellite up, having it take pictures, then it coming down, reclaiming it, and developing those pictures. It could just take pictures, send the data down, and it just stayed up.
We've come a long way since World War II.
Yeah.
I know I won't even get to the politics of war, but war does bring innovation out of necessity. And
a lot of that filters on down to the civilian aspects of life.
It does. And being able to predict weather around the world really was one of those things that came out of that war. Mm-hmm. Because they'd send armadas out and, didn't have a way of knowing when there were tropical systems going through the ocean. How scary is that, to not know that you've got all of these thousands of troops on millions of dollars worth of equipment out there, and you don't know they're driving those ships into danger. So
well, that's like much
weather danger.
Much earlier than that, the whole situation with the Spanish Armada, where the Spanish sent this huge armada of, I think it was either over 300 or 500 ships to invade England. They ran into a massive storm, probably would be on the order of what we would think of today as a hurricane, completely wiped the entire fleet out before it ever even got to England. So, if they'd had something like radar at that time, that probably wouldn't have happened. And as you were saying, a lot of weather forecasting and stuff kind of came out of World War II. That's pretty much where we refined and perfected ground-based radar, which was then further translated into weather radar, I'm sure, from that radar that they used early on in World War II to detect ships and airplanes coming towards fleet formations.
So, sure. Rodney, if you've got it queued up, Google Ninja.
Ninja.
The first spy satellite, the official name was Discoverer 4. The CIA name for it was Corona.
Whoa!
Now, was that Corona the or Corona the...
Well, there's actually a third version.
The corona of the sun.
And they actually did have a problem with
that corona.
That corona. My corona.
There's more to it in that the corona that it's named after actually caused problems on the film, which was an electrical disturbance on the satellite. Because it's up there radiating around in the Van Allen radiation belts and what we know as the ionosphere, the ionized particles. They did have some film damaged by that. It was a real problem with that satellite. But it...
I mean, just like the X-ray machines that they use at the airports can damage and fog film.
Oh, yeah.
I can imagine what radiation from the sun would do.
Right. And there is X-rays up there. So they dumped a bucket. They called it a bucket. It looked like one. It came out of the satellite. It re-entered and dropped the parachute. And it was picked up by a C-123 flying boxcar, which it's an old military plane. And they brought it back and they did it. And the bottom line was the first time they did it, the country that they were surveilling had no earthly idea that they did it.
Interesting.
But it didn't take very long for them to find out, and now they do it to us.
Well, something interesting that was brought to my attention some years ago, I toured the Air Museum in Wichita, Kansas. Now, I had my father with me, and with his background in the Air Force, they were interested in trying to get information from him as well while we were on the tour. So they took us into areas that weren't yet open to the public, which was fabulous. We got to go onto a B-52 that they were preparing.
Nice.
And in the process, he was saying, this plane can never move. If they move it 10 feet on the tarmac, they have to report that movement because we have this agreement with Russia that any of the long-range bombers and other types of equipment like that have to be accounted for, and they're watching with satellite, so they would be held accountable, and it could be interpreted as an act of war if that plane were moved and not accounted for.
That's very interesting.
The Davis Monathan, I think, is the name of the base in Arizona where they decommission aircraft. They break them up in specific orders so that they can stack them, and it's all verification to the Strategic Arm Limitation Treaty. And so there's a whole bunch of aerial photos of a B-52, and then you see one right beside it. The wings are all chopped off from it and folded up so that you can see that it's been taken out of service.
It's not flight worthy.
Right. Now, the other thing is treaties cover rockets, and they're a little more difficult. But we do have a couple of intercontinental ballistic missile silos that are able to be toured. There's trying to think now, there was the Titan that was in Arizona that's open, and there's one up in North Dakota that's I don't think it's a Minuteman, although it might be.
I think it is. I think it is.
But you can actually go in and see what this looks like. And what's interesting is that as soon as the Soviet Union fell in 91, what's the first thing they did? They came over here and they toured our missile silos. Because even though they're supposed to be open in Russia, they never were. But ours are open to the public, and they're administered by the National Park Service.
Well, I know we watched it was either like 5th, 6th, or 7th grade. We watched a movie that was a made-for-TV movie from I think the mid to late 80s called The Day After Tomorrow. And basically what it was
exaggeration.
What would have happened possibly after a Soviet nuclear strike on the United States. And it was mostly centered on eastern Kansas and kind of more that northwestern part of Missouri, because I guess apparently at one time there was a Minuteman missile silo up like about 30 or 50 miles south of Kansas City. So the main areas...
Bauer Air Force Base.
Yeah, the main areas that the stories were focused on was Kansas City and Lawrence, Kansas. And it was kind of interesting, kind of like I said, what might happen after a Soviet missile strike. Which, of course, I think now we're kind of lesser towards that possibility of that happening than maybe we were then, because that was still during the Cold War. But it is not a bad movie. Like I said, it is kind of a made-for-TV movie, so it's not quite Hollywood level production value, but it's not bad. It's interesting. It had some really good actors in it. It had Steve Guttenberg in it. It had Jason Robards, and it had John Lithgow in it.
My apologies. I thought you were talking about The Day After Tomorrow, where they were talking about the the storms and the this and
Oh.
that, whatever.
Oh,
I didn't
no.
realize that's what you
No,
were talking about.
Same title, but no, this was made like I'm wanting to guess probably somewhere like around 85 to maybe 87.
It was not The Day After Tomorrow. It was called
Was it not?
The Day After.
Okay, just the day after. Okay, my apologies.
And that was a good movie. And it was kind of centered around Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah. Like I said,
Yeah,
the
there
two
you go.
the two main areas was Lawrence and Kansas City. Jason Robards played a doctor in Kansas City. John Lithgow was either like a graduate student or a professor at the University of Kansas in Lawrence. And then Steve Guttenberg was with a family that I think had like a farm just a little bit south of Kansas City.
So I got one that's better than a movie. This is real life. And B, you can look this one up because you may not know about this story. In 1980 in Damascus, Arkansas, we had a Titan missile explode inside a silo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was not a nuclear explosion, it was a propellant explosion. Although we had a 9 megaton W-53 warhead on the missile, it was caused by somebody doing maintenance and they dropped a wrench. And now we're talking about a little wrench, we're talking a big wrench. And it fell into the silo and it ruptured the skin of the Titan missile. Now the weird thing about those Titan missiles were they had virtually no strength to them unless they were pressurized on propellant. And so when it hit the side of it, it just punctured it just as easy as banging into an aluminum can. That's how thin that really was. And there's controversy, of course, because it was a nuclear missile, but that had to have been pretty bad news. Because the Titans were liquid fueled, and they basically you mix the two fuels together, it burns on contact. It doesn't even need an igniter. So bad news. There's a couple of YouTube has a couple of documentaries to watch on it, and but you know what? We're not talking about weather. We're talking about nuclear weapons.
Well, they go
This
hand
is how
in hand
random we
sometimes,
are
right?
in real life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What'd you say, B?
I said they go hand in hand in some ways.
They do. They do.
In some ways. I think we digressed when we went to World War II and the weather and kind of launched from there, so to speak.
So, the guys that came in a capsule and splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico, I was watching that live. The Dragon, SpaceX Dragon, they had a little fuel issue when they landed. I don't know if you guys had heard about that, but they were reporting dinitrogen tetroxide, which is one of those fuels that burns on contact. That's the energy that they use to fire the rockets. That's the same stuff that was in that rocket in Arkansas. But they ended up having to delay getting the guys out because they were safe in their little capsule, but it was the people outside, and they had to vent those fumes out of there so nobody would get hurt. We did have a couple of Apollo astronauts that had to go to the hospital after they splash landed because of that fuel. But it's the same stuff. I mean, they're using the same thing 50 years later. There's not been anything that's better.
That's the
Who
one
knew?
thing I do.
Chemistry doesn't change much.
Say again, B.
I That's the one thing I do find quite funny is the technology that we have now is so far advanced as what we did have back then, but yet there's still the same basic principles of back then to nowadays.
Right.
Like same fuels and the same basic technology.
Right. And their splashdown was literally the same as an Apollo splashdown. It was just that the capsule was more advanced. No real difference. So I don't know. Pretty exciting. I'm going to say that
Really, whenever you
in the big picture of
Go ahead.
world events, this is exciting. And
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is. Even though not a lot has come of it yet, I got super excited about the Orion project. Whenever, they said, we're going to go back to the moon, we're going to build a new capsule, we're going to build a new rocket, it's going to be more powerful or as powerful as the Saturn V. This time, instead of just carrying 3 people to the moon, we're going to carry, I think the Orion capsule can carry either 5 or 7 people. I think they're still planning on, I think NASA is still developing the Orion capsule, and they're planning to use it at some point. But that project kind of got killed, the overall project. But yeah, whenever SpaceX started talking about, oh yeah, we're going to have this Dragon capsule, and we've got these Falcon rockets and stuff, I found it really exciting as someone who grew up on the shuttle program. Because, I was in grade school whenever, they hadn't been flying for very long. I was like in first grade, I think it was, whenever Challenger exploded. I've always had this huge interest in the space program, and looking back at the Mercury and Gemini and Apollo missions, kind of in a way wishing I'd been alive whenever those were happening. The stuff with, actually, I think I just remembered, the capsule's name is Orion. I think the actual project was the Constellation program. But hearing stuff about like Constellation and SpaceX kind of makes me feel like I'm finally getting my version of Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo.
And to be alive for all of that, it has been amazing. I remember President Kennedy saying we would be on the moon by 1969, and I was a little kid. But I can so clearly remember him making that announcement. It just stands out in my little kid brain. And
Yeah.
to then, 7 years later, 8 years later, be sitting in the living room floor with family and friends all just glued to the TV watching this happen was just amazing.
Yeah.
And think about the time too. We'd been watching Star Trek and Buck Rogers and all these things that were just fantasy, and here we had the reality right in front of us. It was amazing.
Wild.
And really, up until the moon landing, or maybe a little bit before the moon landing, we really were, for a while, we were playing second fiddle to the Russians, because it was just like everything, they were beating us to it. They were first to send someone up. They were first to have someone orbit. But then progressively, we got better with it. And, as far as I know, I think we're the only ones who have ever orbited a spacecraft around the moon. We're still the only ones who have landed on the moon. So we kind of, at that point, we really stepped up our game. And I mean, it's really interesting and fascinating to see all this happen again. That's like, I didn't even think about it. I think they had said in the news that this Dragon capsule splashdown was the first splashdown in 45 years. And I started thinking, well, we've had landings and stuff before, but then I was thinking, they were space shuttle landings on an actual tarmac like an airplane would take off on. They were not a capsule splashdown in the ocean like with Apollo.
Off topic, Mr. Palmer. Monday, there's a slight risk from Des Moines across to Milwaukee, all the way up to the Canadian border. Are we sure we want to come back to Missouri on Sunday?
Well, I think I'm going to go with there's more risk of us seeing railroad stuff. the vintage La Plata Amtrak terminal and 2 covered bridges. Was that right? There's 2 covered
Yes.
bridges to see.
Covered bridges that we hadn't seen yet.
The Amana colonies, which is kind of interesting. We're going to see that. Hopefully, I'll probably have a string of pictures to make a video out of as opposed to video, although with this new camera, I'm pretty excited about its video capability.
Oh, you mean on your new phones?
Yeah, the new phone. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be able to do like slow-mo and all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah. And
I saw the picture Patty
Happy
posted
anniversary to
the other
us.
day of Steve, and it looked really good.
Your phone disappeared right
yeah,
into
it's
your
completely
background.
gone.
There it is.
And
And it's not an iPhone.
not
No,
an
not.
iPhone.
Not an iPhone. We'll get into that in my rant.
No, I'm an iPhone user, Rodney.
What?
So we
I
are
said I'm
ready.
the iPhone user, not Steve and Patty.
We are ready
Oh.
for a
I
rant.
know other people that are iPhone users, but
And I think it's only
Yeah.
fair to allow our guests to go first. So, Kieran, you're up for your 5 minutes worth of rant.
Oh, where do I start? I think my main one at the moment is because with everything that's going on recently, that people are wearing masks in shops, and they're taking the joke side a little bit too far. I mean, today we had someone dressed up like the Ku Klux Klan that went into the shops and had a plain knife and stuff on him, and obviously police got called. We turned up. We don't know that that's a fake knife until we get there, until we see the object or whatever it was, and it just turned a little bit of a joke into quite a dangerous situation for us and for them. And that's actually happening quite a lot at the moment. There's quite a lot of stories about different things like that, and honestly, to them it's a bit of a joke, but to us it's quite a dangerous situation as we don't know what we're going into.
yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that one day you assume that it's a joke and it's not. Somebody loses their life and it gets even worse. I mean, you have to assume everything is real until proven otherwise, you know?
Exactly. It's one of those situations where, yes, it's more than likely going to be a toy, but until we actually can see it and everything like that, we treat it as real. We can't not.
Well, someone gets a free tasing out of the deal, right?
It was close.
It was close.
We had an
Especially
incident
as
here
there's,
last year. We had an incident here last year. It was a young man, I think he was 22 years old, who went into a Walmart with a firearm rifle
Oh yeah.
and walked through the store. And it was like the riot team was called in on this.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
we're open carry here.
Yeah.
So there was nothing illegal about what he did. He did not point it at people. He was just walking through the store carrying a rifle. but at the same time, it did call in many law enforcement officers. He was actually stopped on exit by an off-duty firefighter who happened to be concealed to carry, and I think it was pretty well resolved by the time the police got there. But because it was considered a terroristic threat up front, so
Well,
yeah,
I
you
think the
have
biggest
to
thing that
assume.
kind of fueled that was the shooting in Las Vegas, wasn't it?
Right before that, and also
I think it
the
was not
Walmart
awfully
shooting.
long
There was
after
a
that.
Walmart shooting down, I think, and it wasn't in El Paso where 20 people had been killed.
Yep.
So it was on the heels of that, and it in bad taste at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
he was arrested on terroristic
Now,
threat.
the thing is
Well,
about
and the way
legal.
that I looked at
Go ahead, Franklin.
the way that I looked at it was because I had several people on Facebook that were, oh, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he did. It was legal. He had every right to do so. We're an open carry state. Okay, yeah, that may well be, but it's not the smartest thing to do.
No, not at all.
And I just really think that the guy was asking for it by doing
He
it.
said he was testing.
Like
He
I
was
said, maybe
testing
perfectly
social
legal,
reaction.
maybe within his rights, but you have to think about it from the standpoint: how are other people going to react, and is law enforcement going to get involved? And at that point, unless you're just out to make a statement, is it really worth the hassle? But then again, see, I'm one of these people that, yes, I believe in the rights of gun owners and people to use guns and to have guns and to use them responsibly. But yet, at the same time, to be able to carry them openly, or particularly to be able to carry them concealed and carry, I think you have to go through a minimum amount of training and be able to prove that you can use it responsibly. I don't agree with what some states have done, and I'm pretty for sure Missouri passed this a few years ago, where I believe it's called carry by rule, where basically it says you can carry a gun no matter what, as long as you're a Missouri citizen. You don't have to go through any additional training.
That's the
You don't have to take a test.
I don't think that's right.
I don't agree with that.
Concealed to carry, you have to go through specific training. And I think that it's even more important for open carry. Anytime you bear a firearm, you should have a minimum amount of required training.
Okay, well,
you should.
Here's my criticism.
We took over B's rant.
We did.
Sorry, go ahead, B.
We did.
It's just that because over here, that's definitely one of the things that I wanted to say as well, is because over here guns are completely illegal. So if we, let's say we saw that over here, then that guy will be going straight to jail, no matter ifs, ands, or buts. But over there, I can understand because it's part of the rights that you have over there to carry and open carry and stuff like that. But when tourists come over and they see people with these big rifles and stuff on their backs, that's gonna really cause different problems there, because they might be from a country like us where you don't see guns every day, and as soon as we see someone carrying a gun, straight on the phone to the police, because that's how we deal with that. So it's definitely one of those things where it's like they're brought up to be able to carry it, but also because it's America and a lot of tourists go there, it's definitely open for a little bit of controversy from tourists.
Now there are some cases in Britain where guns are allowed, and as an example, I've seen recent videos where they have the big pheasant hunts, and I know there are some hunters, but they do pay a considerable fee for the license to do so. Does that sound correct?
Yes, and there's also very strict stipulations on that, where they have to be involved in some sort of farming to be able to get the license, and also they have to have the gun always locked up in a locked cabinet, with the ammunition stored separately. It cannot be stored with the weapon. And normally, the police do like monthly checks to make sure that they are carrying out the safety tips and all of that lot. It's weapons over here are very, very strict.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
it's just for certain specific situations, and kind of like B said, it's very highly regulated.
what I find to be very interesting about the British, and this doesn't fall under firearms; it's more air-powered weapons.
I will be right back.
Besides the what I find is absolutely the most amazing thing is they hunt rats with dogs. They have terriers that they absolutely go into a farm and just kill the rats. Well, they also hunt rats with air rifles. And there's quite a community over there of folks who do that. And it's like, this is kind of cool. We don't do that here. That, at least it isn't making it onto YouTube anyway.
Well, and that's kind of what a lot of those smaller breeds of terriers were originally bred for, was hunting rats and small vermin.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rats and all of that, they are allowed to hunt like that. The problems that we are having recently, especially in the Hampshire and Surrey areas, they're training dogs. They've been doing this for years, but we've now passed laws and regulations against it, where they're now hunting foxes with dogs and stuff like that. And that is very highly illegal now. They still do it, but unfortunately they're trying and get around the laws and use little pathways through it, and it's like, yeah, that's quite a big problem at the moment.
Now, the comment about the guy that walked into the Walmart with the gun, his violation was, and the way the law reads here, if you own a business and you do not want people to carry firearms into that business, you post a sign, and if you do that, you have violated the law. Which the guy that did that at the Walmart definitely violated the law. And, you know, it's one of those things, it's the law to respect the shop owner when he says he doesn't want you to carry. So that right there, when I heard it, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. You know, it's one thing to carry a gun like that strapped over your back on the street. That's legal. You know, it might scare people, but it's legal. But to walk into a shop where they specifically say no firearms, you violated the law right there. And quite likely, he will lose his right to carry after that, because it can be pressed as a felony offense. So, you know, that's kind of my take on it, is he screwed up by breaking the law in the beginning. You know, it's no different than in your place of business, Rodney, where you're the manager. I'm sure Verizon has rules, but if you decide as the manager, I don't want anybody carrying their guns in my shop, you can post that, and they have to abide by it by law.
Right.
And that's pretty standard with most commercial businesses and stuff. The three big ones that are pretty universally standard is most places will post no firearms or weapons. You know, have to come in with, you know, a minimum amount of clothing on. Usually, you know, it's, you know, got to have a shirt on, got to have shoes on, and no pets unless they're service animals. I mean, that's not necessarily automatic for every place. They have to have it posted. But those are kind of three biggies that most commercial places, whether it be a retail store or restaurant, or like some place that provides some kind of a service, that's pretty standard. Most of them usually have that. A lot of churches will have signs posted, no firearms or weapons. The only place that I think that it's pretty well automatic whether it's posted or not are usually most government buildings. It's pretty automatic. You can't carry any kind of a weapon into like city hall, courthouse, anything like that.
So, did you know the Springfield Sheriff's Department was not one of those places? You could open carry right into it. And it
Really?
was perfectly fine until they put the sheriff's office inside the Greene County courthouse. So you couldn't get past security.
Gotcha.
So you could, and at one time, to carry a pistol before they had the current CCW laws, you could go in and, well, you had to go to the sheriff's office to register to carry the pistol. Or to have the pistol in your possession. And when you went into the sheriff's office to register, you were signed up to be part of a local militia. It was automatic. Yeah.
Interesting.
That was back in the 70s.
Actually, what's interesting about that, since I did take my CCW,
Really? I didn't know that.
they gave us the choice. I opted out of it, but they actually signed. They asked you. It was kind of like an anonymous type thing, but they gave you the choice of whether or not you wanted to do that, and I just, I didn't. But I remember them showing that on the list when I filled out the paperwork for it.
Interesting.
So you could be Deputy Rodney then.
Huh?
You could be Deputy Rodney then. No.
Not going to saddle up and ride with the posse?
No. I'm sure
So-
Pete had something witty to say.
Oh, I have so many things I could say to that. Although I must admit, with all the signage and stuff, when you brought that up, it did actually remind me of a really funny story that happened about a month ago. A person was walking down the street and found two firearms that were hidden in the bush. And instead of calling the police and doing the right thing, they decided to pick them up and bring them to the police station. And came into the police station, literally pulled one of the guns and put it onto the counter and said, "I found this," and then went to go and grab the other one. And you just saw everybody in this police station go for their tasers, and the armed officers all go for their firearms. It was absolutely amazing.
It was like
I've never seen so many officers move so quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking, gee, if this happened in any average American police station, I'm sure there would be several police officers pulling their guns.
Yeah. Well, especially over here, because as I said, this isn't an everyday situation.
Yeah.
For us.
Wow.
Have you guys seen the meme? And it's obviously a play on Texas, but it showed this woman, or maybe even a guy, I can't remember, but basically they were in a wine shop, and she pulls the cork, just like that, but it was so loud it sounded like a gunshot. And when they did that, every single person that was standing around go.
Oh, boy. Which, by the way, if you do that whenever you're uncorking your bottle of wine or particularly champagne, you're doing it wrong. It should make a slight stop. No, seriously, it should, because most of the time, if you pull the cork out and it makes a loud pop, it's the carbonation coming out, it will usually bubble up, and you'll get like some foam that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually wasting champagne whenever that does that.
Oh, I know.
Every
People
Super
are.
Bowl game
Everybody's
on
sloppy
that's
about
ever had.
that. You know. Oh, that's the whole point of having champagne, getting sloppy. You know,
As long as somebody else is paying for it, right?
cleaning up after it.
You twist the bottle, not the cork.
Yeah.
The
Just saying.
information that I get on this show. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll send it down the road sometime.
Hey, I read all about it. I hardly drink the stuff, but I read tons about it.
I never knew you were a connoisseur.
A little bit.
Okay, so Kieran, do you feel rented?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, being in my profession, I could go on for a few more hours yet, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you have many, many, many wonderful stories that you could go into.
oh yes.
All I always say is, hey B, how was your day? And I see, memes of heads blowing off, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, he had a bad day.
Oh boy. Okay, so
I have good days and bad days in my profession.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna go to Patty for her rant.
Oh boy.
Can I do this without cursing or putting iPhone users down? This is a good one.
I'll cover my ears.
I'll just leave now then.
So, we got new phones for our anniversary. They came in Friday. And as per usual in switching phones or having to reformat a phone, there is an app that we use at work to clock in and out, request time off, that kind of thing. And that app requires another app for authentication for security purposes. It was the second app that I couldn't activate, so therefore I couldn't use the time clock. And I had called IT on Friday. They had an after-hours gentleman on there, quite pleasant, knew exactly what was going on. We walked through a couple of things, and he said they've got to reset your Okta app. And yeah, we had to do this the last time I took my S5 back to factory specs. So, being an Android user for years, I'm used to being hands-on with my phone. No problem. I call IT on Monday, and I said I need to talk to whoever resets the Okta. I got a new phone, and I've already talked to IT. There's a ticket in on this. I need Okta reset. The little gal must be new. Is all I can say. So the first thing was she's going through all these steps with me. I was like, wait a minute, I've got to get Google Authenticator on board. And she had stopped at some point and went, you're not using a company issued iPhone?
Oh boy.
No, ma'am, I'm an Android user. And it got real quiet. We continue on in the process, and she's like, she told me to do something, and I said, wait a minute, I've got to get Google Authenticator to okay this. We don't use Google Authenticator. Good grief. Yeah, she definitely had, how would I put it? She had her list of things. It was kind of like calling for after-hours support with AT&T, and they're out of country because they have this menu of things that they do, and they can't think past it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a
Like,
lot.
AT&T, my name is Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, yeah. Only this was like local, and anyway. So, anyway, it finally got through to her. I just need Okta reset, please, so I can do this, because when I get to work, I have to clock in on a computer, and when I get there, there's not a computer available because I'm taking somebody else's place. So I have to use my phone to clock in.
Mm-hmm.
You'd kind of like get paid for your work.
Say this again.
I said you'd kind of like to get paid for your work.
I would like to get paid for my work and not have to trouble my supervisor to clock me in on another day to get my time right. Yeah. So, yeah, that was my event of the day, and I'm glad to be having 10 days off because I'm sure B can attest to this too, since the whole COVID thing. The stress levels in the population have gone up exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
So has our call volume. And it's real important, and I want to stress this in a public venue. It's important to take care of yourself, to be mindful of where you're at emotionally. People are overreacting to minor things now because they have nowhere to go with their stress. People who are in their homes with their kids and for days and days and days without end that aren't used to it. Some are adapting just fine. Others, the domestic violence rates are going up, child abuse rates are going up. There's concern in the mental health community that a lot of things are not going reported that would otherwise get reported by school systems because the kids aren't there to be seen by other adults. And in that same light, one more point. With masking, be aware that young children can't even always tell which adult is their parent. So if you take your kids and go out somewhere, make certain that they can identify you readily with your mask on. Some identifying factor. There's concern as well that human traffickers are taking advantage of this. It's scary. Yeah, it's very scary that these children could be so easily taken advantage. And let me tell you a little brief story. My son-in-law was just promoted in the Army and got pinned today. He is now first sergeant. Which
Did they do
they did the pinning ceremony today.
They just slap it on him like they do in Iraq?
Well, Cicely was there to do it, so she has to live with him. I think it went on a little easier. But here she had a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old child, and with her, and they're toddling around, and Miria was like clinging to mom, mommy, where's daddy? And, everybody was in the same uniform. Everybody had on the same mask. She couldn't find her father. He walked up to her and said, honey, I'm your daddy. And she's like, Mom? She didn't know her own dad. And her sister, on a little bit of the, the flip side, just a toddler, she's like walking from soldier to soldier going, are you my daddy? Not my daddy. Are you my daddy? Not my daddy.
Mommy?
Yeah.
Mommy? Yeah. As kids are starting back to school, I want teachers to be very aware of this point as well. They're not going to be able to necessarily tell teachers apart either. And I want to challenge anyone working with children to be sure to put something identifying on and let that child know what to look for. If you're a parent and you're taking your child to the grocery store with you, have a way that child can readily identify you if you get separated. Talk to them about it. Be open about it. It will hopefully save a lot of grief down the road, but it will also take away some of the stress from your child, and that's important too. That's my rant. That's my words of wisdom for the day.
Patty's Ponderings.
Patty's Ponderings.
Now that sounds like it needs a jingle to go with that.
Rodney?
I'll have to figure something out.
Come on, you should be prepared for this.
I should have, yes. That
Yes,
just came
you
to
should.
mind right then and there, but I think that's cool. Patty's Ponderings. We don't call them rants. Patty's Ponderings.
Well,
So,
I think Franklin is probably medicating, which he usually shuts his camera off, so we'll let him do that. Rodney, have you a rant?
I have a rant, but I'm probably safe to say I wouldn't want to do it on public venue.
That's never a good sign.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep it to myself. I'm not wanting to. I don't want to share that with the public, but I'll share it with you guys up the air.
Okay. Well, I guess that leaves me, and believe it or not, I'm not really complaining about much today.
Today, what you complained about yesterday?
he rents it all off on me.
Well, we've agreed that we're not going to do political rants. And I think my biggest rant is politics, because
Oh god.
it's like, well, it's politics. What can you do?
I took a week off from all rants. I didn't necessarily get off Facebook because we've got the weather pages to man.
Right.
But anything that looked like it was going to be political, I just bypassed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this even included Steve. I had found that my stress level was getting concerning. And, I deal immersed in it at work and come home, and I needed a week off to get myself back to ground and to be able to manage things better. And he comes in here about day 4 and he starts on it. I held my hand up and no, I said it hasn't been a week. And he looked at me and his eyes got big. Well, who am I going to rant to?
and the truth is, it is all a rant. I mean, honestly, because the stuff that I watch, where I keep up with what's going on, it's like, this stuff's rant worthy. It's like,
I think you were getting too immersed in it, actually. So
now, I can say that was something you said, Patty, I will rant a little bit about. And it is somewhat political, but then again, it really isn't. This movement in the country here, where we need to redo what the police do, and B can probably really relate to this more than I can understand it. But I agree that there's some changes need to be made, especially when police officers are being called out to handle things that a police officer probably shouldn't be out to handle. And some of the calls that Patty has told me about where, somebody's just really they're not doing anything illegal. They're just crazy.
Not illegal to be crazy.
Right. And
well, that all depends on how crazy.
Well,
depends on what they're doing with the crazy here.
Right. Yeah. And, what I find is kind of disturbing, and I'm going to go to the Naked Man report on the north side.
Daily.
Yeah, for a couple of days. Daily. There was reports on Scanner Chatter about a naked man. And it's like, I'm really not sure that a police officer would be well suited to handle a naked man. Now, B, could you tell us what's your experience there?
We've actually had to deal with quite a few of them. Not
oh
recently, but quite a lot of the time. And it's technically illegal, yes, but there's not much we can do about it. What we normally end up doing is calling an ambulance and putting them on a 48-hour psychiatric hold.
Yeah.
So,
now, would you, just a guess, because you probably don't know up front, Would most of these people be under the influence of illicit substances?
Yes, most of them are either under heroin or crack.
Yeah.
And that would be the same here. And this is why mental health professionals probably should not be on scene for something like this. Not only are they naked, but something to be concerned about is they can be very assaultive. They're using things here like a mix of heroin, fentanyl, and meth, which absolutely makes them unreasonable. You can't hold a conversation with them. At best, you might get a word or two in, but they are so caught up in the insanity of the drug and what it's doing to their brain, you can't rationalize with them.
No, you really can't. We've got a couple like that, and it's like because we're not equipped to deal with them, we can't deal with them for the public order offence, and so unfortunately we have to sort of rely on the health professionals to deal with it that way, because they normally end up giving them a drug to calm them down and sort of bring them under some sort of anaesthesia, so then they can run their tests, make sure their vitals are all right, and then they'll take them to the hospital where they'll be put in a special ward for people like this, and then they'll have to start the recovery from there.
But we depend on we in the mental health field depend on law enforcement to subdue those people, to get them into our care, because we are not equipped to do that.
Yeah, because that's what we normally do. We normally get called to the scene. We try and reason with them. When that all fails, because 90% of the time it does, we normally end up either having to just take them down to the ground or tase them or do something to subdue them, and then we can then get the ambulance in and they can do their part.
And if I'm not mistaken, don't some drugs like PCP induce kind of like a psychotic or a hallucinogenic state that kind of makes people more difficult not only to deal with, but it's kind of like, I don't know if it causes like an adrenaline rush or something, but where they are less susceptible to some of those more less than lethal ways that the police or law enforcement might try to detain them. Because I know I've seen, I think on like some episodes of some shows like Cops, where someone's high on like PCP or angel dust, and I mean literally like 3 or 4 officers will tase them, and it's like
Ineffective. Yeah. And go ahead, B.
But that's definitely 2 of the drugs that are the worst. I know we had one that was holding a knife and was threatening people with it, and we tased him about 6 or 7 times, and he just didn't even feel it. He didn't even know that he'd been tased. The only way we could subdue him without injuring him worse was we ended up sort of butting the car up against him and then pushing him down, and then had about 6 or 7 officers jump on him to be able to get the knife away from him, handcuff him, and then we let medics take over from there. But besides injuring him, like shooting him or doing something like that, that was the only way that we could get him subdued.
Gotcha.
Well, it's crazy.
My nephew was involved in an incident, and the young man was high on what he says is antifreeze, which I hadn't heard that was also being used. And pretty much the same thing, only that he came out of an apartment shooting. Just totally unreasonable. Meth can do the same thing. And because there's no pure drugs on the street, sometimes you just don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
When they say more mental health needs to be involved, yes, I agree. Mental health needs to be involved. our answer here has been to train officers, and they are community intervention trained or crisis intervention trained officers that have been trained by mental health professionals to walk into situations with people under the influence, as well as people who are suicidal, which it happens a great deal. And if you have a loved one or a friend or someone that you've become acquainted with who's making threats, you can call a wellness check-in here. 911, ask for a wellness check, ask specifically for a crisis intervention trained officer to report, especially if that loved one has a history of mental illness. Because they are taught techniques that the other officers don't get as much depth in their training.
Yeah, that's exactly what we have over here. All police officers are not normally highly trained in that field, but they do have some sort of mental health training. So, when we do get called to do welfare checks and things like that, if we do come across anything, we are equipped with some tools to be able to help that person, get into some other field where they can get better help. We can talk them down to a certain level.
That's awesome to hear.
What I think then is that this information is not being shared
by the media. No.
By the media because of reasons. I mean, who knows?
Don't even get me started on the media.
Is this another rant?
Quite often, I end up kicking them off my scenes because they either end up getting in the way, or they end up skewing things to how they want it to sound and not what actually happened.
Mm-hmm. See, as someone who wanted to be a member of the media at one time as a photojournalist, there's too much opinion that gets thrown into it. Why can't we? And maybe even he spun things a certain way that he wanted them to sound. But I kind of use Walter Cronkite as the gold standard. Why can't we just report the facts of the story and just leave it to the readers or the viewers to make up their own opinion about it?
Yeah, if they did that, I wouldn't have half of the problems that I do with them being there. But because they like to skew things and try and push people in one direction, it's kind of like, no, you're causing more problems being here than you are not.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I have no problem with them introducing their own opinion if it's clearly labeled as an opinion piece or a commentary or something of that nature. But when you're just reporting the news, report what happened, where it happened, who was involved, what was the outcome. Leave it at that.
Well,
if it's an opinion piece, identify it as such up front.
Yeah, exactly.
Patty and I watched some vintage news report, and I don't remember what it was, but it was something that could be taken under an opinion. I mean, you have a pro opinion and a against opinion. And it was interesting because the reporter covered the pro opinion and then they covered the negative opinion equally.
Yeah.
And didn't say, well, we think. No, they didn't say that. They just gave both sides. And it was like, wow, that's real journalism. Look at that.
Yep.
We have one reporter here that's absolutely terrible. What he does is he makes his own opinion up of what happened. And he'll start asking people questions. But what he does is he doesn't actually give anybody a chance to talk. So, like, I do remember once where he tried to give an interview to one of my officers. And he came around there and basically was saying, "Oh, well, this happened and that," and then but he wouldn't actually give my officer a chance to speak. All he did was just kept over talking him, and basically interviewed himself.
Nice.
And obviously that went live, and everyone then was all against the police because he skewed it to the point where he made it look like we falsely arrested this person, beat him up, threw him in the back of the van, and it's like, no, that's not what happened. What they forgot to say was the guy held a knife to an officer, and we had to take him down in that way in order to keep everybody safe.
Oh yeah, it's always skewed in some shape or form.
Yeah.
It's like, but because he didn't give the officer a chance to speak, we couldn't get our side of the story across.
Well, not only does it not let you get your side of the story across, it could come across to some viewers like, well, this officer didn't know what was going on. They're not responding. So were they even involved in the situation? If they don't know what's going on, how can they properly ascertain and deal with the situation? I mean, there's tons of different ways that you could take that, and none of it would be the actual facts of what actually went on.
No.
Do you have public information officers that field things like that?
Yeah, what we do is that we actually call them community support officers. So they deal with the community side of things and all of that, but they also deal with the media types of things and other things like that.
Okay.
Glad it's not me. I tell you what,
Yeah,
B,
I really wouldn't like that job.
You fall into that category of doing stuff that nobody wants to do, like being a police officer, being a somebody who deals with the dead. I can't deal with it. But yet there's people out there that really love it. Can't figure it.
Fatalities are always my least favorite. I hate dealing with them. I deal with them because it's my job, but I really don't like it because obviously it's still a person. They still have family. They still have loved ones and friends and everything like that. And even if it's a bad person that we had to take out, or they whatever the situation may be, you still do feel for the family and everything else.
Right. I mean, but there's somebody who comes in and they deal with the body. They do the right things that's supposed to be done, that the majority of us couldn't deal with. No way.
Yeah. My dad always used to dislike responding to a call for the city PD, county sheriff's office, or the state highway patrol that involved a fatality.
Oh, you gotta say, B, you're in that category. You do stuff that most of us don't want to do, and we appreciate you for doing it.
Very much.
Unfortunately, we don't feel very appreciated 90% of the time.
I'm sure that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, quite often we're driving away from the scene, and especially at the moment with all of the protesters and everything. Luckily, most of that's died down, but when that was all in the midst of all of that, that was horrible. We had things thrown through the car windscreens. We had our vehicles spray painted. Our officer was at one of these scenes, and the car ended up getting spray painted. Every single piece of glass in that car was smashed. They threw sugar in the gas tank. It's like, really?
Now that ruins an engine right there.
Yeah, well, luckily the car was undrivable anyway, so what we did was just drop the gas tank out and put a new one in, so it didn't actually make it into the engine.
Well, that's good.
It was still kind of like, why? How does this help?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It makes things worse.
And the thing that I wish that more people would understand that are doing the protesting, yes, there are some bad cops out there. Yes, there have been some who have done
Pause
terrible
for the cause.
things. But that's not all of them. I don't even think that it's really the majority of them. We just need to be, I think, a little bit better about selecting who gets to be a police officer. And sometimes I think that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because at least over here, there's so few people that really want to be a police officer, who want to take on that responsibility and that hassle. Sometimes I feel like maybe some departments tend to maybe accept some people that otherwise, if they had a wider pool of people to choose from, that they might not pass on. I think we need to be a little bit more better about maybe some of the mental health screening of some potential police officers, and maybe a little bit more anger management training. But I don't believe it's the vast majority of police officers that are like this.
No, it's very, very small number of officers that, I mean, they're not even that bad normally. But you push them to the point, and then they will start, going over the line, which they should be. And that's when you start getting the problems.
Maybe if they had a little bit more support before they got to that point, they wouldn't ever get to it.
Oh yeah, it's trouble is trying to find the officer at the right time, because quite often people, when they get into that situation, especially in this job, they try and hide it, because if they get caught in that kind of frame of mind, I would take them off of the job straight away, because I can see that they're not fit to do their job at this point. So I wouldn't basically not fire them, but I would take them off of the job until they
might get suspended for a while.
Yeah, until they can get their act together and come back on the job and do the job properly.
Gotcha.
Is it possible to move them to desk work for a time while they're getting assistance in managing whatever it is that's troubling them? Or is it that they get administrative leave immediately?
Depends on the situation. If they're not that bad, I would give them desk work. But if they really are bad, I would just suspend them straight away, because desk work, believe it or not, is actually even more frustrating and more like face-to-face and more confronting than actually frontline work, because you have to deal with all of the people that come into the office to report crimes, and quite often those are the ones that are a lot more irate.
They're being more confrontational.
Yeah, so if you're putting an already on-the-line officer in front of somebody who's already ticked off and wanting a fight, those two don't mix very well.
Yeah, potentially volatile situation.
Yeah, so I like to just basically say, you need help, go get that help, come back, and your job's waiting there.
Well, guys, we need to move along to one last rant. That would be Franklin.
I don't really necessarily have a rant, but maybe an update to a previous rant. I think maybe my first rant on here. I did call, was it yesterday or the day before? I did call Mediacom, and I was happy to find out that they can provide me internet service. So I guess I'm just waiting to find out from AT&T for certain whether I'm on a contract when my current month runs out, and then make the switch about then.
Woohoo! Hey. I think we need a sound effect for that.
Yeah.
And the next rant will be, I can't keep my internet service going because it's out 2 times a week. Just randomly for hours at a time.
It ain't that bad.
See, I think
if you're in areas with the older infrastructure, it's bad.
I'm thinking that means this building is only now. Of course, that does not necessarily mean the infrastructure in the neighborhood around the building, but means this building is basically 3, maybe 4 years old. They have, at least on the AT&T side, they have fiber to the units. I'm figuring that at least Mediacom stuff into the building should be fairly new. Now, that, like I said, that doesn't speak to the network around in the neighborhood.
Keep this in mind, and we've had a number of services in this house, okay? I could list them all, but at least 5 different services to this house.
Okay.
The only one that is not satellite driven directly is AT&T.
AT&T.
Mediacom has dishes sitting in the parking lot to pick up the signals that they broadcast out.
Mhm.
You're going to lose signal when there's heavy snow and when there's heavy rain.
Now, they do have fiber into their head end. And if we had it here, we're not close to the fiber outlet. It's not real close. But I think where Franklin is a bit closer. I think there's one on Pythian, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But who knows? There's
Must
a lot
have
of
fiber
structure
just right down
changed
the
since
road.
I've worked there.
I have fiber literally about 1 foot away from me because I have a lease line.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
We have
So-
fiber about 20 foot from where I'm sitting, but they won't bring it into the house.
Oh, nice.
So I
no.
quite like it. Even over Wi-Fi, I normally get about 1200 down.
You make me
Nice.
sick. Ugh.
It just ticked me off whenever they told me that I was going to have to pay $145 to have the connection moved from the connector in the front room into this room. And I mean, I was incensed to begin with to find out that it's not to each of the 5 connections in the apartment. It's just to one at a time. And then when they told me, oh, $145 for them to switch that, I'm like, get serious. I'm not paying $145 for you guys to switch it from one connector to another connector 10 feet away. And then I got to looking into and I got to finding now, of course, it's a promotional fee for a year, but I think the promotional fees, if I remember right, whenever I looked at it as being a new customer to being an existing customer, was only like $10 a month higher. I can get 100 megabits down for $10 less than I'm paying for 6 megabits from AT&T. And for the same price per month, I can get 200. Now, of course, that's not dedicated bandwidth, whereas like with DSL and Uverse, it's dedicated to your location. So if everyone else on the node in the neighborhood's on at the same time, your speed doesn't go down. Whereas with cable, you share it with everyone else on the node. So the more people in the neighborhood who's on Mediacom, my available speed will go down. But I'm thinking with 100 or 200 megabits, hopefully it doesn't go down that much.
It won't go down that much.
No.
Yeah, I don't.
It shouldn't.
Now, there's an interesting story behind that, because I was in on the initial build of this plant, and we were not the only media. Well, it was AT&T at the time.
Yeah.
There was one of the telecable sister companies that was putting it in, and what they do is they throttle it at the head end. So you have a speed that people are going to get, and you throttle it at that. Well, they had not turned that throttle on a test that they had done, and so only employees had connected to the cable modem.
It's pretty amazing.
And
We had Beta 3, wasn't it?
they were getting like 300 megabits. I mean, it was just smoking for the time. But then they're like, well, wait a minute. It's not going to be like that, because we have to throttle it, because when we add more customers, it'll slow down, and we don't want people to see that. We want to say, well, this is what it is, and it will always be that, unless there's other network things, which, you know, what can you say? There's always other network things. Always.
So I think what we're probably going to end up going with is either the 100 or the 200 megabits down.
You will not know how to act.
You will.
I'll actually be able to get through one of these whole live streams without everyone's picture in the Skype window pixelating.
Mm-hmm.
Would be useful.
Yeah.
So, if you feel ranted, Franklin,
Like I said, I didn't really have a rant, just an update.
we at Jungle Chasers also have what you would consider board meetings. And we are going to do so, which means that it's completely off topic of what the show's about. And so I think it's time for us to say our 73 round. And so, Kieran, if you want to start, we'll let you say goodbye to our viewers, and then we'll move on to whoever's next.
Well, through lack of call sign, you can call me Killer B, aka Kieran, and have a good day or night, whatever time it is for you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.
All right, we're going to go in order of joining, and Patty was first.
All right. Well, Kieran, it was a pleasure to have you aboard tonight. Thanks for joining us. I want to wish everybody a happy and safe weekend coming up. If you're in the Ozarks area, and even into Iowa, know that we have a heat wave coming back in. Summer is making a return, so take those precautions to be safe. If you don't know them already, please look up the symptoms of heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Hydrate, take plenty of rest breaks if you're having to be in the outdoors, and do enjoy. We do have rain coming in overnight, maybe a few boomers, nothing severe is expected. I'm thinking I'll sleep good tonight, honestly. And with that, be safe, be happy, be healthy, be blessed. 73 from KD0AEL.
All right, I guess I'd be next. So I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us again. I probably didn't see much in as way of chat, whatnot. I wasn't paying attention, but if you responded or anything like that, we'll be sure to get back with you. Again, be sure to share with your friends. Like, subscribe, get the word out. If you're enjoying the content that we're putting out, maybe somebody else will too. So anyway, until next week or whenever we see you again, this is K0Z, and I'll be seeing you next week.
So I guess it's left up to me. I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. Thank Kieran for being our special guest. And as Patty did say, warm temperatures. I think the last that I had seen, I'm not sure if it's still current, supposed to be heat indexes of possibly low 100s on Saturday. I'll be staying here. I got part of my weather station set up earlier. It's currently a nice 66 degrees in the room that I could probably hang meat from the ceiling, but it feels comfortable to me. It's only 58% humidity, so
refrigerator.
So I'll be nice and chilly here, even if I don't get out over the weekend. So just want to say thanks for everyone joining us, 73s, and we'll see everyone again next week if we don't see you sooner.
All right, and this is Steve, KA0SPM, and thanks everybody for, thanks to our crew for being able to be here tonight, and especially our special guests. We always seem to kind of take it off topic a little bit and enjoy the time together. So it's been great. And thanks to everybody that watches our shenanigans and antics. It's I hope that you have as much fun as we do. So like and subscribe, and gonna say 73